this video I'm going to talk about the 9 explanations or theories of gendered patterns of achievement in school. These come from Chapter 2 of Francis and Skelton, 2005. They have functionalism, sex role theory, evolutionary psychology, brain difference, psychoanalysis, social construction, post-structuralism, human capital theory, and neoliberal individualism. In functionalism, institutions function to serve the needs of society. So society needs the differential work of gender in this particular explanation. Now, of course, this doesn't account for how we actually stymie the growth of working class kids and those with opposite gender talents, but the notion is that we are producing the genders we need to do differential work, and that's how society will function. In sex role theory, children learn from schools and adults around them the appropriate role for each gender. So males learn from other males, females learn from other females, and they are differentially rewarded or punished based on whether they get those things right. Now, evolutionary psychology, gender differences in cognition have developed over millions of years as an adaptation to ensure the survival and propagation of the species. One of the things that is often used as a criticism is that this is kind of based oftentimes on a Flintstones view of human past, which is oftentimes very speculative. So we don't actually know a lot about how gender differences were done back in millions of years ago. Brain differences is one that's really big, especially amongst teachers. It's the notion that brain differences and hormones, other biological things between men and women make them more or less capable of certain cognitive things. So men are capable of certain things because of various areas in their brains, and women other things. And of course that is translates out to things like reading and mathematics. Now, of course, our understandings of brain are actually in infancy, and differences are usually minute. Brains are not kind of locked in at birth. Psychoanalysis is the next one, and that is based on Sigmund Freud's conceptions. There's Sigmund there. Of course, he's got to have his cigar, which of course is only a cigar. At any rate, it's basically the notion that there are sexual drives that within human cognition, human experience, that make males seek to actually reject things that are feminine, ultimately because their fathers, who they are trying to symbolically kill and get rid of, expect them to be masculine. So they reject things feminine like reading. So that's one of the explanations. The next is social construction. This is the notion that gender is developed and maintained through repeated social interaction, sort of building up how people work from situation to situation. Now, the good thing about social construction, of course, for political purposes, is that you can change gender if it is constructed. In postmodern time, we think about post-structuralism, which takes the notion that truth and reality are not actual possible things in terms of what gender is. Rather, gender and sexuality are discourses that reside in people's heads and in institutions, and those institutions maintain power through perpetuating these particular discourses. Human capital theory, of course, is all about the economy. So that economic success at a macro level requires a well-educated workforce. So if we think about the notion of underachievement, this actually goes against the notion of human capital theory, because that underachievement is not a good way to actually push forward economics in society. Finally, and much more recently, the notion of neoliberal individualism. the notion that globalization has changed kind of the basic relationship between the state and individuals. Individuals are good and they are responsible for maximizing themselves, and the state, in a sense, is bad. It gets in the way of individuals, except when they are actually being pushed by the state and given at least a basic education from the state. Again, this comes from Francis and Skelton, Chapter 2.